So today we're going to talk about the top mistakes that people make when they're setting up a battery system in an RV or a travel trailer. So we're talking about some of the mistakes are lead acid related, and most of them are lithium ion related. So let's get started. The one big mistake is people are not putting a fuse at the battery source. So you really need to fuse the battery source itself, because if you have any problem with any of the system down the line, even if the line's rubbing on the vehicle's frame and shorts out against the frame, all these things can happen. Your air conditioner, if you have a 12 volt air conditioner running off your battery, it can draw and cause problems. So you need a fuse on the battery itself. There's two types of fuses you can get for this. One fuse is called the MRBF. Those fuses are rated for 300 amps and below. You can see on the fuse what the amp ratings are. So if you have a 12 volt system that's pulling in 1200, 2400 watts of power into your RV, then these ones are really great because they go right on the terminal. You don't have to have a lot of complexity to add this fuse. It's very simple and just a really clean, easy fuse to install. The other fuse is called the ANL fuse. Anything above 300 amps, you're going to need this type of fuse. They have 300, they have a 700. I'm not exactly sure all the options, but I know they have a 300 and a 700 amp. So anything above 300, you need the ANL. Another problem people cause is they have too small of a cable coming from their battery to the inverter or whatever they're running off of the battery pack. So let's say your battery is way up front on the tongue and you have your inverter way at the back of the RV. Shouldn't do that to begin with, but let's say it is. That length of the RV could be, 15, 20 foot. And because of the length of the cable and you're running a 12 volt system, you are going to have a massive cable to get that power all the way to that spot. So if you're running an inverter, try to put your inverter, if possible, as close to your battery source as it can be. That way you don't have to run a massive cable to your inverter. The reason for this is you get this effect called the ripple. It's a ripple power effect, and it it ripples the power on small cables, and it can actually shut off your inverter. It can wear out your inverter if it doesn't shut it off, and it can wear out your batteries. So you're going to cause excessive wear because you have too small of a cable, and it's excessive wear to your batteries and to your inverter. So make sure that you get the right size cable to the voltage to the length. So, and all these things you can look up online. That's like mine is a 12 volt system. You can say how many, how much feet of cable do I need for a 12 volt system, and I'm running 100 amps on that 12 volt, and it'll tell you what the gauge of wire you if you're running. Like mine is 10 feet, I think it is. So it'll tell you what you need for that. Another issue is whenever you're running multiple batteries and you're tying them over and over and over, you are tying them negative, 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 negative all the way down the line, and then you're going out. Then you're going positive, 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 and then you're going out. Well, this is actually bad because the end batteries on that set are going to have a lower discharge and a lower charging rate. You're going to get a lower rate, and it's going to be making each battery set have a less of an equal charging experience. So this one may charge all the way and discharge all the way, charge all the way, discharge, and this one may not be doing the same, and it's going to make your batteries wear out incorrectly. You're going to have one battery that's going to be dead, and this one may still have 50% of life still in it. And you're going to have to change out all your batteries because you think it's all shot. So make sure when you tie your battery lines into it, tie it like if these are the positives and these are the negatives, go positive, 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 positive out, and this direction negative, 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 negative out. That way this run is going this way out, this run is going this way out, and you'll get an even charge and discharge rate because of that. Another thing is know your BMS limits on your battery. So for example, my battery is 140 amp hour, which means it can pretty much run anything except for a microwave and an air conditioner. Those two items I can't run with that system. It's 1200 watts. Now the reason why I know it's a 1200 watt is that 140 amp hour battery has 100 amp BMS on it, and it's a 12 volt battery. So you go 12 times 100. That means I can put out 1200 watts of power, which means I need to match my inverter to my battery. So I have a 1200 watt inverter. This makes sure that the amount that the battery can supply and the amount that the inverter can put out won't it won't overdo each other. They'll always match. And same thing with powering or charging your battery. When you're charging your battery, you can have a mistake of your battery's messing up because you may have 800-900 watts or 1,000 watts of power on your roof for the solar, and when you plug into your site when you go camping and you finally got the site that's got power on it, you plug into your site, and the second you plugged in, your onboard DC charger turned on, and it might be putting out 50 amps of power to your battery. So you're getting 50 amps of power charging that battery set, and then high noon hits, and you have 1,000 watts of power coming in from the solar panels, and you convert that over, and it's 80, a little under 80 amps of power you're getting from your solar panel. So you have 50 amps of power coming from your land and 80 amps coming in from there, and now you're running too much power trying to charge that battery set. So another problem you can end up having is you can have loose connections on your system. And this is actually more common than you think because you're in an RV. This thing is bouncing down the road. I mean, thousands and thousands of times every single bump. Those wires are bouncing around. So this can actually happen quite often. So check those connections to make sure they're all tightened up. And mainly, check from the inverter to the battery set. Check all the connections at your battery and make sure that everything is tight, even in your fuse box assembly. Even though that's not really related to your solar setup or your battery setup, check the connections in there because they can all come undone. So, like I said, these RVs are a giant earthquake on the road. Another problem is when you're not matching your systems. So let's say you have 48 volts system on your battery set. It's producing 48 volts, and that's because you had to have a certain amount of power and voltage for an air conditioner. Now you're changed your air conditioner out because they got these new 12 volt air conditioners that are really efficient now. You installed that 12 volt air conditioner and you put a converter on the air conditioner to convert 48 volts down to 12 volts. Well, the problem with that is you are running a 48 volt system, converting it down to 12 volt, and that is causing a lot of heat because you're going to have a 10% loss for converting it down. And because you're running such a high demand item, you're going to have a lot of heat getting stored up inside of that conversion box. That's why you kind of got to match your system of if I have a 12 volt air conditioning and say everything in my RV is 12 volt, I should try to match the best I can my battery setup for it. So if I'm running 12 volt here, I'm going to run a 12 volt battery set. That way there's no conversions happening and everything's going to run fine. Now, this is a little interesting. The fan that I have, and a lot of people complained about this. It's not just the one I have, but many of the high brand ones too that are $300 fans, for your RV. Problem is, lithium batteries put out a higher voltage than 12 volts. They put out 14.8 volts, I think it is. But they put out a higher voltage, and a lot of the electronics in the ceiling fans won't allow over 12 volts. Maybe 13 volts is the max. So when you're throwing 14 volts at these ceiling fans, you may, last a year, and then it's going to blow up on you. It's going to quit running. You're not going to know why. It's 1 year, it quit running. Then you buy a new ceiling fan, and then a year later, that one quits on you too. So what you can do on this case is you get a DC converter that converts, it's like between 36 volts and 8 volts. Anything within this zone, it'll convert that to a steady 12 volt system. So if my lithium is putting out 14.8 volts, it's going to hit the converter and spit out 12 volts steady. And that will keep my fan running forever. So, like I said, and I'll show you that in the description. It's a little tiny converter box. I think it's like this big. And you can even just throw it in between your panels up there. It's really easy to install. Well, that wraps it up for this episode. And if you like what we're doing, please subscribe, and we'll see you next episode.